bring it in. Let's try keep the first 3 rows, and then when more people come, they can kind of spread out. How are you guys? It's really lovely to be here, actually. I remember coming here as a kid. Probably maybe some of the grandparents would come as young men and women to attend a Sunday school camp or something like that. Your parents ever tell you about that? They did? Amazing. Great memories. Always a drama. Always something. So I really, it takes me back. And let me tell you, actually, I remember coming to this church as a young kid, so maybe mid-teens, I'd say, or early teens. And so I really love this church, and it's such a blessing for many churches across Sydney. So as Anthony mentioned, we're continue on with Exodus 16, correct? Okay. Has anyone attended the last couple of weeks, other than Anthony? Yes? What's your name? Sorry? Albert. That's a lovely name. So can you tell us, Albert, what the last... So chapter 14 and chapter 15 potentially, if you can summarize for us just a little bit. Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The Jewish people? Yep. Yeah. Yes. Yes. It's the first horse, Mishkeda. Did you guys confirm that? Yeah? Who knows? Yeah, it's the first horse, yeah? Yeah. Yeah? Yes, absolutely. So, well done. Thank you, Albert. Spot on. You hit the nail on the head. It's exactly what I was hoping to hear. The summary for the last 2 chapters is exactly as Albert mentioned. Chapter 14 is the crossing of the Red Sea. And, of course, that was one of probably the most remarkable moments in Jewish history. And for us, that's also a great symbolic meaning for us, in that it really resonates with our understanding of baptism. So there is no crossing over to the promised land unless we enter through the baptism. And as you know, traditionally you'll find that any church that you enter, traditionally, the baptism is at the back there. It's as if to say there is no way to the Eucharist without first passing through the baptism. And that's why the baptism is generally at the back of the church. Okay, so how about we'll just jump straight into Exodus chapter 16. So, what's your format generally? Someone read it for us? Yeah? Yeah. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen.
And they journeyed from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month after they departed from the land of Egypt. Then the whole congregation of the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said to them, Oh, that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat, and when we ate bread to the full, for you have brought us out into the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Then the Lord said to Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain quota every day, that I may test them, whether they will walk in my law or not. And it shall be on the 6th day that they shall prepare what they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. Then Moses and Aaron said to all the children of Israel, At evening you shall know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt. And in the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord, for he hears your complaints against the Lord. But what are we that you complain against us? Also Moses said, This shall be seen when the Lord gives you meat to eat in the evening, and in the morning bread to the full. For the Lord hears your complaints which you make against him. And what are we? Your complaints are not against us, but against the Lord. Then Moses spoke to Aaron, Say to all the congregation of the children of Israel, Come near before the Lord, for he has heard your complaints. Now it came to pass, as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the children of Israel, that they looked towards the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, I have heard the complaints of the children of Israel. Speak to them, saying, At twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread. And you shall know that I am the Lord your God. So it was that quail came up at the evening and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay all around the camp. And when the layer of dew lifted, there on the surface of the wilderness was a small round substance, as fine as frost on the ground. So when the children of Israel saw it, they said to one another, What is it? For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, This is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat. This is the thing which the Lord has commanded. Let every man gather it according to each one's need, 1 omer for each person according to the number of persons. Let every man take for those who aren't in his tent.
Are in his tent, sorry.
Then the children of Israel did so, and gathered some more, some less. So when they measured it by the omers, who gathered much had nothing left over, and he who gathered little had no lack. Every man had gathered according to each one's need. And Moses said, Let no one leave any of it till morning. Notwithstanding, they did not heed Moses. But some of them left part of it until morning, and it bred worms and stank. And Moses was angry with them. So they gathered it every morning, every man according to his need. And when the sun became hot, it melted. And so it was on the 6th day that they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each one. And all the rulers of the congregations came and told Moses. Then he said to them, This is what the Lord has said. Tomorrow is a Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you will bake today, and boil what you will boil, and lay up for yourselves all that remains, to be kept until morning. So they laid it up till morning, as Moses commanded, and it did not stink, nor were there any worms in it. Then Moses said, Eat that today, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will be none. Now it happened that some of the people went out of went out on the seventh day to gather, but they found none. And the Lord said to Moses, "How long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? See, for the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Therefore he gives you on the sixth day bread for 2 days. Let every man remain in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the seventh day." So the people rested on the seventh day. And the house of Israel called its name manna, and it was like white coriander seed, and the taste of it was like wafers made from honey. Then Moses said, "This is the thing which the Lord has commanded. Fill an omer with it to be kept for your generations, that they may see the bread with which I fed you in the wilderness, when I brought you out of the land of Egypt." And Moses said to Aaron, "Take a pot and put an omer of manna in it, and lay it up before the Lord to be kept for your generations." As the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. And the children of Israel ate manna 40 years, until they came to an inhabited land. They ate manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan. Now an omer is 1/10 of an ephah.
Thank you. Okay, so it's a long chapter, but let's just recap, right? You really did such a great job in reading it. Thank you. So, what happened? As we heard from Albert a little earlier, chapter 14 was the crossing of the Red Sea, and chapter 15 was the praises of the Jewish nation to God, and that forms part of our Tasbeh till today, Exodus chapter 15. And actually something that's very interesting also, so as we read in Exodus 16 today, it's about the people of Israel complaining that they have no food, and they made a complaint and said, "Moses, you brought us out here to die." In fact, I'll just quote them because it's very interesting. Then the whole congregation, verse 2, "Then the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said to them, 'Oh, that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat, and when we ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out here to the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger.'" You lying liars! You were in Egypt under the persecution of the Egyptians and being, driven as slaves, and what meat? And this is a little thing for us I want you guys to hopefully take note of, is that this sense of woe is me, this sense of victimization, that card that we play sometimes, is very dangerous. Society throws it out in every which way. Everyone's a victim. And a small problem is magnified. Unfortunately, our church isn't immune from it either, which is really sad to see. But it's not too late. You're a young generation, you can turn the tide. You have the ability to choose what to do. So, don't be like the Egyptians. Sorry, we're all Egyptian, but some of us are Sudanese, but we're all Egyptian, right? Sudanese, Egyptian, all the same. So, don't be like those Jews who dwelt in Egypt and then went out and complained to Moses and said, "You brought us out here to die. We had all this wealth and we were eating to the full, meat coming to us in full pots. Like, you guys were slaves. You were barely scratching, some crumbs." So that's the first thing we take from this story. And then what happened? Oh yeah, before I forget. So in chapter 15, we saw that they started to complain also that because they come out of the Red Sea and they had no water, and Moses did a miracle for them. So God sort of let them complain. Why couldn't God, God knows everything. He could have just sent them the manna straight away. Why did he let them complain? Well, firstly, he wanted to see whether they're going to remember this great moment that they just had only a couple of weeks back, walking through the Red Sea, and a massive wall of ocean either side of them, the sun shining on the base of the ocean. It's a remarkable thing. So he wanted to test them out to see what they would do. And this is something that we can again learn from. Sometimes God waits to see, what am I going to do in this situation? Am I going to complain, or am I going to say, Lord, no. I know that in my past history, you didn't leave me. There were moments where the storm raged and the waves were too high for me. And I know you didn't leave me then. And whilst this situation is different, I have faith that you won't leave me now. Now that's what he hopes for us to say. Unfortunately, we tend to say, where is God? Why have you left me? Don't you love me? Why do you love this person more than me? Why is this person in this situation and I'm in this situation? And we start comparing and looking around for external answers. So the Lord sometimes is just taking us to the brink for us to regain our faith. So the quicker we confirm this, the better it is for us. Okay, what happened next? So Moses, of course, as he tends to, ran to the Lord straight away and said, these people have said X, Y, and Z. And the Lord said, look, go back and tell them that they're going to eat to the full. And so he did. He said to them, look, God has said to, and as we read in verse 4, then the Lord said to Moses, behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather certain quota every day, that I may test them whether they will walk in my law or not. And then he gave him a criteria. He said, look, I'm going to give you food every day. And not only once, I'll do it twice. In the evening, you'll have meat. In the morning, you'll wake up and you'll have magically this manna, which we'll talk about in a little bit, to cover the ground and enough for you and more. So he said to them, but the condition is this. Only take what you need for the first 6 days. And on the 6th day, take for that day and the following. And if you take, and as we said, take for each man one. If you take in excess, I actually didn't tell them what was going to happen. He said, just do that. And that was it. So the Lord wanted to test them. And unfortunately, first off the bat, they failed. They took too much. What ended up happening? The food started to rot and stink and worms came out. So Moses said, why'd you guys do that? Like, the instruction was simple. Only take this much. Why did you overdo it? And then on the 6th day, they had to make provision for 2 days, for the Sabbath. And so they listened, and lo and behold, the manna didn't rot, no worms, nothing stunk. Absolutely brilliant. Okay. So they ate and they lived. Fantastic. This story of the manna has a greater meaning than what we just discussed. And the depth is described and explained by Christ himself. Not any of the disciples, not any of the apostles, not even the great St. Paul, the evangelist, not St. Mark, not any of the fathers. Christ himself took it upon him to explain to us what the story of this man is. Where is this explanation? I think you all know. In John chapter 6. So if you don't mind, if you can flick with me back or over to John chapter 6, if you will, please. John chapter 6. I want you to remember two numbers, if you can, in the Gospel of John that are sacramental chapters. Okay? John 3 and John 6. How many chapters did I just say? 2. 2 times 3 is 6. Easy to remember? Let's lock that in there. So John 3 talks about baptism. And John 6 talks about the Eucharist. So if anyone comes and says to you, hey, where does it say in the Bible that we need to be baptized? Actually, if you flick to John chapter 3, unless one is born of water and the Spirit, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. John chapter 6, as we're going to see, unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you'll have no life in you. You won't abide in me. I won't abide in you. But what happens if you eat? I will abide in you. You will abide in me. You will have life. So let's read. Okay, so from verse 22. Okay, let me just put things into context for you. John 6 also has feeding of the 5,000. And the feeding of the 5,000 story is, thank you, feeding of the 5,000 story is one of the few instances that are documented across all four Gospels. The Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, are very chronological. They take the life of Christ in order, and you find that they talk to one another in terms of a sequence of events. The Gospel of John is very different. The Gospel of John is focusing on the point, Jesus Christ is God. And if he is God, then let's look at everything that proves he is God. So you find the first 7 chapters or so are talking about the life of Christ and certain miracles, and almost every chapter focuses on one aspect. Like John 1 is, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, about the Logos. Jesus Christ is the Logos, and everyone certainly within the Greek circles understood that the Logos was divine, so he linked it that way. John chapter 2, you have the wedding of Cana of Galilee, turning the water into wine, God. John chapter 3, unless you are born of water and the Spirit. John 4, the Samaritan woman, and so on and so forth. It's like almost one thing per chapter. So John 6 is feeding the 5,000. And in feeding the 5,000, the people got full and they were so happy and they were ecstatic. This is amazing. We're getting a free feed if we follow this man. So they were like, this guy is extraordinary. So let's read what happened from... We're going to skip a few things actually because of the time. Okay, let me try to recap some things and then we'll read from 6. So essentially they followed him and they said, because he was on one side of the Sea of Galilee and he went to the other side. So like, when did you get here? There was a story in between which I didn't mention. This is when he walked on water, when the disciples were crying out, Lord save us and what have you. And he came and to them walking on the water. So they got to the other side and the people, they're like, Rabbi, when did you come? And he said to them, most assuredly I say to you, you seek me not because you saw the signs, as in the miracles, but because you ate of the loaves and were filled, as in You only came after me because you want a free feast. Do not labor for the food which perishes, but for the food which endures to everlasting life, which the Son of Man will give you, because God the Father has set his seal on him. And then verse 33. So can someone read from us from verse 33, please?
For the bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. Keep going. Then
Please.
they keep going. Yeah.
Please.
Then they said to him, Lord, give us this bread always. And Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall never hunger, and he who believes in me shall never thirst. But I said to you that you have seen me, and yet do not believe. All that the Father gives me will come to me, and the one who comes to me I will by no means cast out.
Please keep going. I'll tell you when to stop.
For I have come down from heaven, not to do my own will, but the will of him who sent me. This is the will of the Father who sent me, that of all he has given me I should lose nothing, but should raise it up at the last day. And this is the will of him who sent me, that everyone who sees the Son and believes in him may have everlasting life, and I will raise him up at the last day. The Jews then complained about him, because he said, I am the bread which came down from heaven. And they said, Is not this Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How is it then that he says, I have come down from heaven? Jesus therefore answered and said to them, Do not murmur among yourselves. No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him, and I will raise him up at the last day. It is written in the prophets, and they shall all be taught by God. Therefore, everyone who has heard and learned from the Father comes to me. Not that anyone has seen the Father except he who is from God. He has seen the Father. Most assuredly, I say to you, he who believes in me has everlasting life. I am the bread of life. Your fathers ate the manna in the wilderness and are dead. This is the bread which comes down from heaven, that one may eat of it and not die.
Thank you. We'll just pause there for a sec. So, most assuredly, I say to you, he who believes in me has everlasting life. I am the bread of life. Your fathers ate the manna in the wilderness and are dead. This is the bread which comes down from heaven, that one may eat of it and not die. Of course, the Lord Christ here is talking of himself. And he's talking of the sacrament of the Eucharist. And he's saying to them, look, there will come a time when I will sit with the disciples and I will offer up my body and my blood for them to eat and drink and have everlasting life. So, your fathers ate the manna and are dead. This is bread that is perishable, but my body which I will give you is something that will give you eternal life. And up until this moment, humanity could still not understand. And in fact, some people still say the Lord Christ was talking symbolically. We'll address that in a second. Let's keep reading, and I want you to keep an eye out. This is really important, especially if you have any Protestant friends who say that the sacrament of the Eucharist is only symbolic, or is only supposed to be symbolic. I want you to keep an eye on a particular verse that is very clear, that it says that the Lord does not mean it symbolically. Okay, let's keep reading, please. I can't see who's reading, so whoever's reading, can you please keep going? There we go. Okay, we're doing rotating mics. That's good.
I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. And the bread that I shall give is my flesh, which I shall give for the life of the world. The Jews therefore quarreled among themselves, saying, How can this man give us his flesh to eat? Then Jesus said to them, Most assuredly I say to you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up at the last day. For my flesh is food indeed, and my blood is drink indeed. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood abides in me, and I in him.
So we'll just pause there for a sec. So just within these two verses, at least 4 or 5 times, unless you eat my flesh, unless you drink my blood, my body is food indeed, my blood is drink indeed. So he's very specific. Okay, let's keep going.
As the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so he who feeds on me will live because of me. This is the bread which came down from heaven, not as your fathers ate the manna and are dead. He who eats this bread will live forever. These things he said in the synagogue as he taught in Capernaum.
Yeah.
Therefore many of his disciples, when they heard this, said, "This is a hard saying. Who can understand it?" When Jesus knew in himself that his disciples complained about this, he said to them, "Does this offend you? What then if you should see the Son of Man ascend where he was before? It is the Spirit who gives life. The flesh profits nothing. The words that I speak to you are spirit, and they are life. But there are some of you who do not believe." For Jesus knew from the beginning who they were who did not believe and who would betray him. And he said, "Therefore I have said to you that no one can come to me unless it has been granted to him by my Father." From that time many of his disciples went back and walked with him no more. Then Jesus said to the 12, "Do you also want to go away?" But Simon Peter answered him, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. Also we have come to believe and know that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Jesus answered them, "Did I not choose you, the 12, and one of you is a devil?" He spoke of Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, for it was he who would betray him, being one of the 12.
Okay, thank you. Anyone want to try to take a stab at what verse would mean or would indicate that Christ was talking literally and not symbolically? Anyone? You debating? Have a go. Sorry? Yes. Okay. Yeah, keep going. Yes.
I feel like since the response was that they walked away, then it
Yeah.
must have meant something more than just a symbol.
Agree. But what makes it, yeah, you're spot on. But there's just one more step that we need to add to this argument. So what's your name? Justina. So follow Justina's argument and just see if you can add an extra step just to seal the deal. What happened next? When they walked away, what did Christ do? Yeah, so what's your name? Andrew. Yeah, so what does that imply, do you think? Yeah, right? Because if they misunderstood, he'd go, "Hey, come back. Where are you guys going? I was just talking symbolically." No. You're going to eat my flesh and drink. No, I didn't mean it like that. That's not. But he didn't do that. He was willing to let all his disciples go. But he wasn't going to turn back on his word. Wow. To the extent that he would let the disciples go, yeah. Ma salama. But I'm not going to go back on what I meant. So this is really important for us. Okay, let's now relate this in the concept of the Old Testament, the manna. So in the Old Testament, as we read in Exodus 16, the Jews complained and the Lord rained on them quail and this beautiful manna. The word manna from a Hebrew context is actually the Hebrew and Arabic is very similar. Yeah? So like manhaza, right? Like, what's that? So the Jews are like, manna. And they're like, yeah, that sounds good. Let's just call it manna. So it stuck. They didn't know what it was. And as the Bible describes it, it's like a thin wafer. And it tasted beautiful. And it was thin, though, that it was able to be eaten just like that. Or it can be used in some kind of cooking like fitir or whatever you guys better. I'm not much of a cooking person. So it can be cooked in different forms. But the amazing thing is that, and this is really interesting, I want you to now, let's think of what happened and use it in light of the idea of its intended purpose, i.e. the Eucharist. What did we see? We see that those who went and took only a little bit were full. And those who took a lot were also full. We saw the Eucharist, so we saw the manna produce worms when it was taken out of context. But it also, when it was used in the right time, i.e., when it was for the Sabbath, they doubled up on the quantity. It didn't rot, there was no worms. So let's look at that now in light of the New Testament. What the fathers tell us here is that anyone who comes to receive the body and blood of Christ, if they are in great need and they're going through troubles and tribulations, whatever it may be, they walk away content. And even if someone comes with a thankful heart, there isn't much that he's crying out for. A thankful heart and praising God will also walk away content. Someone is yearning and crying from the inside about someone who's going through a difficult circumstance, an illness or whatever it may be, will also be content. The second thing that we received from this story also is this idea of the Sabbath. The idea of the Sabbath is something that started with creation itself. The Lord created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh day. Of course, for us, the day is symbolic. For those who might be questioning our position on it, our position is quite clear. We're not amongst the churches that say, no, the creationist theory, as in it was 6 days and 6 days. But actually, science doesn't say that. Science says that it was over billions of years. That's fine. From our perspective, a day is a duration of time. It could be 1 billion, it could be 3 billion, it could be whatever. So every time you see "and," that's a duration of time. Anyway, so the Sabbath was intended all the way from Adam and Eve. Why? And why did the Lord make it clear in this story? And why did he get persecuted for it? To the point that they were going to stone him in John 5 or John 8 for healing people on the Sabbath. So the idea of the Sabbath for us today, and from the beginning of time in fact, is that there must be time for us to spend with God and serve others. Many people say, Abuna, I'm so busy, I'm studying, I'm working, I've got to walk the dog, whatever. There's just stuff, I've got so much on. By the way, you think you're busy now? Wait till you're married with kids. Anyone married with kids? Of course you wouldn't be here on a Monday night, right? So, there was a point in time where I thought I was busy. And then I had my first child. Let me tell you, I had all the time in the world and I had no idea. So, I've got no time. Can you do something? Can you do this? So God wants us to A, spend time with him, and B, serve other people. Because we can't just always take. And if you're living in a realm of just taking, and not just you, but those within the same bubble, there's something not right. So something has to change. Anyway, we won't get too bogged up in that now. the Jews had a problem. They would work 7 days if they could. Not only them, but obviously those slaves that they had also in ownership. They would have worked them to death. And God understood that. So there had to be a time for them to stop and do good. This is the point I want you to take. Stop and do good. And ideally, the Sabbath for us, which is obviously for us Sunday, it doesn't stop when I receive the Eucharist and walk out the door to get like whatever sandwich from the canteen or hit the coffee shop or whatever. No, actually. Do good. That day, do good. If, let's go by argument's sake, that my week is incredibly busy and I've got exams or I've got a project or I've got whatever it may be. Even if that's the case, and you can't fit God in your week at all, at least that day, do that. No, Buna, we've got family, we've got lunches, we've got to go out. There's engagements, there's weddings, there's Mashadaf Air. But what about for Siam? No, for Siam, I've got to catch up on assignments. I've got to, I might put in that extra shift in. It's OT, like that kind of stuff is, it's hard to go by. You've got to make some decisions. So try to allocate that day, pick a day. And if you're not sure, speak to your confession father. It's really important. And say, Abuna, I'm struggling to give time to God. How can I give time to God? And he'll help you with it. He'll talk, okay, let's talk about your day. Let's talk about your week. Let's talk about what you do. So this is an important point in terms of the Sabbath. Our last point for this evening just on the Sabbath. So Christ was persecuted and they said, how can you do these things on the Sabbath? Does anyone remember what the Lord said to them? What did he say to them? Which one of you? Yeah. Donkey, yeah, mule, yeah. Exactly right. Yeah. So which one of you wouldn't, or take your donkey to get water, or like they used to do that. But to do good for someone else, God forbid. So their understanding of God's intention was warped. And this is really something that we really need to try to take here, is that the devil can take something good and warp it. Something as ancient as the Sabbath, which was instituted by God, and make it bad. St. Paul, in his one of his final letters to Titus, he said to Titus that to the pure all things are pure, but those who are defiled and unbelieving, nothing is pure. But even their mind and conscience are defiled. It's to say that even something is pure and good, to someone who is deceitful and wicked, essentially anything that is good, they see something bad in it or something evil in it. And God made everything good, of course. So that's... Okay, so back to our manna. And we'll finish off with this. Okay, this is the last point I'm going to leave you with. How long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? And that's a question we need to ask ourselves. How long are we going to refuse the commandments and the laws that God has set for us? Very often, we make excuses for ourselves. And no one knows you better than yourself. So I ask you, reflect, evaluate, and ask yourself, how long? You know, every day, I just heard of someone passing away yesterday, I think in a horrible accident also from one of the eastern suburbs churches, quite young. Every day we're hearing about someone passing away at a time that is, we had a 11-year-old child a couple of months ago pass away. No symptoms, nothing. Young men in their 20s, young men in their 30s. No one knows their time. So we need to be prepared. We need to be prepared. The Lord asks and says, how long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? You know, in the midnight prayer, Psalm 119 says, how can a young man cleanse his ways? By keeping your laws and your commandments. That's it. It's easy, but it's hard. It's easy in that we know what we need to do. It's hard when we try to do it. But you know what, guys? There's no magic pill. There's nothing that, there's no button that you can press. We live in this society of instant Uber ... You can just name anything that you can just say. We live in that. We don't. This is not like that. You have to put the effort in. The kingdom of heaven is not cheap. It doesn't come cheap. You need to work for it. We all need to work for it. I talk to myself before I talk to any of you. We need to put the effort in. So do it. Don't wait. Many people said, it's all right, when we're 70 and, yeah, okay. Who can guarantee? I'll just work a few more extra years, get that, save up for that mortgage on the house or that car or whatever. Who knows? Who knows when our time will be? Who knows when our time will be? The Martis, this obviously we celebrate Croissant Bin, Feast of the Neiros. Look at all the icons around. The church doesn't put these icons just haphazardly. It's for us to look at them and realize that they've chosen the right portion. That they've realized that our time on earth is inconsequential compared to our eternal time in heaven. So use your time wisely. It is a gift. May the Lord of glory continue to bless you guys. Thank you very much for allowing me to join you. It's a beautiful service. I thought I saw a quick glimpse of Abuna Paul, but he must have left, so please send him my love. Thank you. I'm not sure what you guys do now in terms of prayer or announcements and stuff. Okay, sure. I take that as a no. We stand up to pray.